I'm Mark Golub, and in the news on the American scene, an explosion of events, which seem to be polarizing our nation even more than it has been. First and foremost, the tragic shootings in Dallas, Texas, of 12 police officers, 5 of whom were killed during a rally protesting 2 police shootings earlier this week, one outside St. Paul, Minnesota, the other in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that apparently needlessly took the lives of 2 African Americans. As of this moment, news reports are contradictory as to how many snipers were part of the assault on the Dallas police. We know that 1 sniper was killed by the police. But the real issue here that surfaced in a most violent context this week is the extent to which there is indeed rampant racism in our police departments, or whether that charge is overblown. At the same time, this entire week, Americans have been trying to make sense of FBI Director James Comey's telling the country that while many of Hillary Clinton's public statements about her emails were misleading, and that while the former Secretary of State was both negligent and extremely careless in her handling of classified emails, the FBI found no evidence of any intent on Mrs. Clinton's part to harm the United States, and that absent the intent, no responsible prosecutor would prosecute this case based on the evidence, and that therefore Mrs. Clinton should not be charged with any crime by the Justice Department. 2 controversial issues that are dominating the American scene at this time. Well, to bring us some perspective, I'm so pleased to have once again on our JBS phones a man whose courageous voice has been a call to reason and social justice for some 50 years, for America, for the State of Israel, and for the entire Jewish people. It's a pleasure to have once again on our phones Alan Dershowitz, Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, a prolific author, and whose latest book is entitled Abraham, the First, but certainly not the last, Jewish Lawyer. It's available in Jewish bookstores everywhere. It's online at Amazon.com. Alan, thank you so much for being with us again.
Thank you.
Alan, you were kind enough to agree to speak with me today before the tragedy in Dallas to talk about the Hillary Clinton email situation, but I really would like to begin with the police shootings in Dallas. You've been a criminal defense lawyer. You've been a civil rights activist your entire career. You've dealt with police departments for years and years and years. From your perspective, is there serious, rampant racism in our police departments or not?
Well, some police officers, of course, have racist tendencies, but I would say that police departments all over the country are trying their very best to eliminate racism. First of all, many of them are hiring people of color and people of different and diverse backgrounds. And some of the police officers who have ended up shooting African Americans have themselves been people of color or minorities. So I would say that there is a serious problem, but it's not a structural problem of police departments. I think it's of who are hired to be policemen. Is there enough to eliminate racism? How do you deal with the fact that, in fact, historically, African Americans have higher rates, particularly young men, higher rates of crime than comparable, violent crime particularly, than comparable people of different racial backgrounds. Policemen know that and respond. They do profile racially, so there is a deep problem. But let me tell you about a deeper problem in our society, what worries me about what went on in Dallas.
Please.
And that is this. There are people out there, the hard left, the Bernie Sanders supporters, the hard left, Black Lives Matter, Move On, that associate what went on in Dallas with what's going on in Israel. What they do is they have a motto, Ferguson in Palestine, it's all the same. It's a concept called intersectionality, saying that all oppression around the world is similar, and the Israeli oppression of Palestinians is no different from the police oppression in Ferguson and in other places. And what I worry about is that the violence that responds in Israel, the violence of terrorism against Jews, will become part of the violence against Americans, against American policemen, against white Americans. We're already seeing tweets all over the internet calling on black people to murder white policemen, much like you see in Israel. So the concept of intersectionality, all oppression being intersectionally linked, is turning on its head, and I'm afraid is going to lead to people saying, just like the Palestinians have the right to murder innocent Jews in their bed, so too oppressed blacks have the right to murder innocent policemen and innocent civilians. So I think this is a deeper and more fundamental, more profound problem that has real implications for the Jewish community in America and for Israel.
You know, it's very chilling to hear you describe it that way, and I think it's important for all of us to hear it. You know, you and I spoke recently about this television series on the O.J. trial, and one of the issues that was raised was whether Mark Fuhrman, as a policeman, was in fact a profoundly racist man or not, and the way at least the way the drama has been portrayed, you and others on the defense team felt that the racism of Mark Fuhrman was symptomatic of a problem inside the police department, and it was used in some way to affect the outcome of the trial. I want to ask it to you one more time, a little bit differently.
Right.
I want to know, you've dealt with the police your entire career.
Right.
Have you personally found, again, not individual incidences, but the suggestion now, Alan, is that this is an endemic problem inside our society. And there's nobody better I could ask, to what extent are you concerned, out of the sense of you know, of all the work you've done, the social justice you've championed, the civil rights movement you've been a part of, what do you say to those in the Jewish community and on the American scene as a whole about the extent to which you feel we must be worried and concerned about systematic racism in the police departments of this country?
Well, I have to tell you that in the 20 or so years since the Simpson case, where we did find systematic racism in the LAPD, particularly on behalf of several of its prior chiefs, things have changed dramatically. I mean, we now have police commissioners all over the country who are extraordinarily sensitive to racial issues. New York's police commissioner, LA police commissioners, Boston's police commissioner. They are models of dealing with these racial problems, and they do not tolerate structural racism. In the police department, is there some residual racism? Yes, but I think it overstates it to talk about systematic, inherent, structural racism in most police departments. Are there some small police departments around the country that are systematically racist? Probably yes. But I would say that in the large police departments of the United States, over the past 20 years, tremendous strides have been made to eliminate the previous structural racism. And I think what we see today is a much more complex problem.
Yes.
And remember, too, that there are many within the African American community who want to disarm young gang members who have guns. Remember, too, that the greatest number of victims of black violence in America are black people in communities all over the country who are victimized by black gangs. And when you compare the number of African American young people who are tragically and often inexcusably killed by the police, it is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of black people who are killed by people within their own community. And organizations like Black Lives Matter are doing a terrible, terrible disservice to the rule of law by focusing all the attention on the police, blaming it on these kinds of intersectional issues, you know, from Ferguson to Ramallah, the same problem. We have to fight against that kind of racism within Black Lives Matter as much as we do about racism within the police department. You want to ask me a direct question? Is there more racism among Black Lives Matter than among the police departments? That's a really good question.
How would you answer it, Alan?
Well, I think today it's always more dangerous when there's racism within government organizations,
Yes.
within the police. But if you ask me about the racism within Black Lives Matter, it's very deep. And the anti-Israel and anti-Semitic aspects of Black Lives Matter is profoundly disturbing. They have a good cause. We should support their cause. Black lives do matter, but so do Jewish lives, and so do lives of policemen. And we cannot let this kind of identity politics dominate that only Black lives matter. That's not the correct approach to this problem. We have to deal with this problem in a non-political, non-ideological way, in a way that doesn't say that simple-minded solutions apply, that if only Israel would end its occupation, we would see the end of terrorism in the Middle East, and that terrorism in the Middle East is no different than police violence in Dallas or Chicago. That kind of nonsense on stilts has to be addressed along with the racism that we see in the police department. We have to fight against all forms of racism, racism within the hard left and racism within the hard right. We're living at a time when the extremes are gaining power on both sides. We see that in the current election. I'm actually writing a new book called Why I Left the Left But Couldn't Join the Right, the case for vibrant centrism, which is an attack on both the extreme left, as reflected by some of the people who supported Bernie Sanders' Move On, Code Pink, Black Lives Matter, Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, and on the hard right. And we have to fight both extremes. We're seeing it spreading all through Europe, the Brexit vote, the election in Hungary, in Greece, in Poland, in Austria, of hard right candidates, the increasing power of hard left on university campuses. All those pose a danger to stability, to democracy, and to the Jewish people, because we thrive at the center, and we are always the first victims when it comes to extremism, either of the right or of the left. The Jewish community has historically been caught between the black and the red, the black of fascism and the red of communism, the black of the extreme right and the red of the extreme left. So we have to fight hard to regain the center and to make sure that the center is responsive to the reasonable and legitimate concerns of people in the community. And that includes racism to the extent it exists in the police departments and racism in our society in general. We have to deal with these issues.
You know, Alan, it's no secret to anybody who watches JBS that I'm a real fan of yours, and I've said it many times. And when you talk this way, first of all, I think it is just thrilling to hear, because I don't know anybody else on the Jewish scene, and I don't know anybody else on the American scene who has the courage to say things the way you say them. You've always been identified with liberal causes, and you know you're going to get slammed by the left, by liberals, for the kind of the strong position you're taking, even though, from my perspective, what you now call, you used an adjective, what kind of center are you writing about? The what center?
The vibrant center.
The vibrant. I believe you're 1,000% correct, and that many of us who grew up as liberal Jews caring enormously about social justice that affected Jews, but also affected the African American community and every minority community that was persecuted. We were all there. And at the moment, it's very hard to be on the far left. And what you're talking about, this vibrant center, is where I would love us all to be. But you know, Alan, you're going to take criticism for the things you've just said on JBS.
I'm going to get criticism both from the right and the left. You
Yes.
should see the tweets I get from right-wing Jews, right-wing Zionists, who call me a traitor to the Jewish people, a traitor to Israel.
Unbelievable.
I get that all the time because I support the two-state solution. Then I get equally horrible tweets from the hard left that say I'm a traitor to liberal causes because I support Israel. Look, the late, great Elie Wiesel, I paid a shiva call just yesterday on his wife and wonderful son. got criticized even in his death, not for liking the Palestinians too little, but for liking Israel too much. And, people like Rabbi Lerner of Tikkun magazine went after him so inappropriately, even before the Shiva was over. Max Blumenthal went after him. Fortunately, Hillary Clinton immediately disassociated herself from Max Blumenthal. But if you're in the center, you're going to get attacked equally from the right and equally from the left. And when I get up in the morning and read my emails and the attacks come equally from the left and the right, I know I'm in the right place.
All right. Do they ever hurt, Alan?
Say that again?
Do they ever hurt?
They hurt sometimes when they come from Jewish supporters of Israel who call me a self-hating Jew or a traitor. People who don't understand the difference between their enemies and their friends really do create real problems. And look, I have a thick skin, so I'm never going to be pushed away from my support both for liberal causes and for Israel. But there are many others who will be pushed away if they keep getting these kinds of attacks from the extreme right within the Jewish community and the extreme left within the Jewish community. And, we are the most diverse community ideologically in the world. We've had the most extreme leftists ranging from, Trotsky and others to the most extreme people on the right, Meir Kahane. And we've never benefited from hard left Jews or hard right Jews or hard right or hard left communities. We have to fight for the center, for the vibrant center, whether it be the liberal center or the conservative center. Today, there is much more in common between liberal centrists and conservative centrists than there is between liberals and radicals. My biggest enemies are the radical left. And I have conservative friends who say the same thing. Their biggest enemies are the reactionary right. And remember, too, the reactionary right contains many anti-Semites as well. Pat Buchanan is a virulent anti-Semite. And people on the hard left, Max Blumenthal, is a virulent anti-Semite. And we have to fight equally against both of those extremes.
Beautifully said. Okay, Alan, let's talk for a moment about the flap over Hillary Clinton's handling of her emails and her public statements about them, and then the FBI director's statement that even though she did in fact mishandle classified emails with what he called extreme carelessness, he also stated that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case against someone who acted as she did. And I have to ask you first, Alan, you've been strikingly honest and objective when commenting on very sensitive and controversial issues. But here, Alan, you are a close personal friend of the Clintons, both Bill and Hillary. And I want to know first, am I putting you in an unfair or awkward position by asking you to comment on Mrs. Clinton's use of emails and the obvious contradictions between what she told America and what she testified under oath to Congress, and then what she seemed to have said to the FBI?
Look,
is this difficult for you?
No, it's not difficult for me. I'm a public person, and I state the truth, whether it involves friends or not. I wrote very critically of the Clintons when he was president, and we remained friends. I'm a friend of Ted Cruz. I'm a close friend of Sheldon and Miriam Adelson. I have friends on the left and the right. And for me, one of my criteria of friendship is support for the nation state of the Jewish people. I am not in any way uncomfortable about telling the truth about my feelings. So let me tell you what I think. First of all, I think that I know Comey too. I wouldn't call him a friend, but he's been to my class at Harvard Law School. He's lectured at Harvard. Was the U.S. attorney. And he's an extraordinarily able, competent, honest, and honorable man. And I think he was 100% right when he said no reasonable prosecutor would bring cases, and when he said it would indeed be a double standard to have prosecuted Hillary Clinton under circumstances where this statute has never been used to prosecute anybody who was careless, even extremely careless. So he was right about that. Was he right in then going beyond that and talking about the evidence and saying that he thought she was extremely careless? Most FBI leaders don't do that. And what I worry about is FBI people are supposed to only investigate the facts. They're not supposed to be the ones who make judgments about who should be prosecuted and who should not be. The problem here was caused in part by Bill Clinton having that conversation on the tarmac with Attorney General Lynch. I think he may have pushed the Justice Department and the Attorney General into saying that she would not exercise her usual discretion. She would leave it to the head of the FBI. Now, that's fine when it's a guy like Jim Comey, because we all trust him. But remember who was the first FBI director? The building is named after him, J. Edgar Hoover. Would anybody want to leave in the power of a new J. Edgar Hoover the power to investigate facts, the power to apply the law, the power to exercise judgment, and the power then to describe the evidence publicly and influence the outcome of a presidential election? That is a very dangerous power to vest in one human being because, as James Madison once said, laws are not written to protect the good people, the good government officials. They're written to protect us from the bad government officials. And I'm worried that the director of the FBI has too much power under what Jim Comey did just a few days ago.
Very interesting. Look, so many people have expressed the thought, including honest Democrats who absolutely support Hillary for president, believe it would be a disaster if she lost and Donald Trump won. But many of them have expressed how upset they are that Director Comey did recommend no criminal charges be brought against Hillary Clinton. And what confuses people is that there seems to be a confirmation by the FBI that she lied under oath to Congress.
No. That's not so. The confirmation is that she may have misstated facts or made mistakes of fact to the public. If she lied in front of Congress, she will be indicted. I mean, that's a crime. That's perjury. If she lied to the FBI, she will be indicted. I think that Comey said that there was absolutely no evidence that she lied to the FBI. It doesn't matter whether you're under oath or not. When you speak to the FBI, you're absolutely obliged to tell the truth. And if you don't, Section 1001 of the Federal Criminal Code makes that a felony. And Comey found that there was no evidence that any such perjury or any such statement of deliberate misstatement to the FBI occurred. What he wouldn't comment on, but he was questioned about it very effectively by a congressman, was did she make statements to the public, not under oath, political statements that have now been proved to be untrue? And his answer was yes, she made statements which turned out to be untrue, but he wasn't sure whether she knew they were untrue at the time she made them.
Okay. I want to give you my thinking on why Director Comey, on the one hand, spent 14 minutes what MSNBC called excoriating Mrs. Clinton, and then seemed to make a hard left turn and recommend that she not be charged. I don't believe, Alan, in any explicit conspiracy. I don't believe Director Comey received any pressure from the White House or the Clinton campaign or from former President Clinton or any political source.
If he received pressure, he would have resisted it.
Okay.
He's a Republican, number one. He was not initially appointed, to any of his positions of high authority by Democrats. He owes nothing to the Democrats. And when he said he had no contact and the Justice Department didn't even know what he was saying, I absolutely believe
Okay, and I do too. I also believe, and this is what I want to hear you comment on, that on some profound gut level, James Comey understood that if he recommended charging Hillary Clinton, he'd be changing American history, if not world history. And in essence, he found a way by which he convinced himself that Mrs. Clinton should not be charged because any other decision would have been disastrous for this country. What do you think?
First of all, I think had he done that, that would be a fair assessment, but I don't think he did. I think that what he said was, look, he's looked at many, many decades of prosecutorial discretion under this statute. Nobody has ever been prosecuted. And to prosecute Hillary Clinton and change the dynamics of the election would be to apply a double standard. So I think had he recommended prosecution, that would have been the political decision to influence the outcome of the election. Look, what a lot of people don't understand is that 90% of people who commit technical crimes in America are never prosecuted. Why? The criminal law is like an accordion. It is so broad and so filled with discretion that you need to exercise discretion in a sensible way. You have to look at the history of how a statute is applied. Could Hillary Clinton have been prosecuted by an irresponsible prosecutor based on the concept of gross negligence? Perhaps so. But as he said, no reasonable prosecutor looking at these facts would have done so. Why? She was not badly motivated. She wasn't trying to hurt America. She wasn't trying to help an enemy. She had no intention to do anything wrong. She didn't engage in any kind of a cover-up under the law. That is, she didn't testify falsely. Those are the criteria that prosecutors generally apply. And under those criteria, I have to tell you, I agree, no reasonable prosecutor would have prosecuted. Would an unreasonable prosecutor somewhere in America have done it? Perhaps so, but that should never be the criteria. I think that if the shoe were on the other foot, and this were a Republican administration, and the candidate had been, on the other side, I think the same result would apply. I've had experience talking prosecutors out of prosecuting my clients, and these are the kinds of cases where criminal lawyers do succeed in talking their clients out of it because there's so much discretion. The statute is so broad. If you actually prosecuted everybody who engaged in carelessness or even extreme carelessness, the jails would just be filled and people would not want to work for the government and have access to classified material. Remember, too, that every member of Congress, every senator, all have private emails, which they're entitled to have, and they carry them with them all over the world, and they're easily subject to being hacked. Even the State Department was hacked. And remember, too, we're talking about a time when hacking wasn't as prominent as it is today, some years ago. So when you consider all of these things together, Comey did the right thing by recommending against prosecution. What I'm concerned about is that decision should have been made by the Justice Department, not by the FBI. That gets me very nervous as a civil libertarian.
Good for you. But I know there are going to be people who are going to ask me, why didn't I ask you this and why didn't I ask you that? I only have 1 minute. You've got to keep yourself to 1 minute, Alan. There is perception here. And what you've talked about is the reality of the law and why it was appropriate for Comey to recommend no prosecution. You wish he had recommended nothing. But the perception among the American people, again, even among Democrats, is that this represents two standards of justice.
They're just dead wrong. And I'll give you an example. When Tom DeLay was prosecuted, he's a reactionary Republican. I was on his side. I said, this is the politicization, this is the criminalization of political differences. When Governor Perry, a reactionary Republican, was indicted, I was on his side. So I can tell you one thing. I apply a single standard. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, if there's a vague statute, there's a concept in criminal law known as lenity. You might even translate that into Hebrew as rahmanut. But lenity, rahmanis. And the principle of lenity says when you have a close call on a criminal statute, you always err on the side of not prosecuting. Better 10 guilty go free than one innocent be wrongly confined. That's the way the law should always apply. If anyone has a criticism and wants to talk about a double standard, the criticism should be at those prosecutors who do prosecute under these circumstances, and it shouldn't be directed at a legitimate head of the FBI who applied the right standard and said there should be no prosecution under these circumstances.
Alan, I wish I had hours with you, and sometimes you give me that as well, but it's so sweet of you to give me some time here. You've addressed some very important issues on the American scene, and it's always wonderful having you on JBS. Have a wonderful rest this summer.
Thank you so much.
Be well. Alan Dershowitz, Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, a prolific author whose latest book is entitled Abraham, the First, but Certainly Not the Last, Jewish Lawyer. My thanks to all those who helped put this program together: Sloan Copeland, Serge Goldberg, Dennis Golan, JBS Associate Director Dara Golub, and the producers of this edition of In the News, Carol Lilienthal and Jan Weiss. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.